The galaxy belonged to three great empires that had ruled for thousands of years. Everyone knew this simple truth. The Zephyrians built their cities from living crystal that sang when touched. Their bodies looked like walking diamonds, and their thoughts moved as sharp and clear as their crystal forms. They controlled the northern spiral arm of the galaxy with perfect order and cold logic. The Kethver were different. They shared one giant mind across billions of bodies. When one Kethver learned something, they all knew it instantly. When one felt pain, they all suffered together. Their hive cities buzzed with constant activity as millions of insect-like beings worked as one consciousness. They ruled the eastern regions with calculated precision. The Luminari were strangest of all. They had no solid bodies, existing as pure energy that danced between stars. They could reshape matter with their thoughts and travel at the speed of light. Their plasma forms glowed like miniature suns as they claimed the central core worlds. As their domain, these three empires looked down on the rest of the galaxy like gods watching ants. They had destroyed countless civilizations and absorbed their technology. Nothing could challenge their power. Nothing had ever tried. Earth was a joke to them. The small blue planet sat in a quiet corner of the galaxy, ignored by everyone important. Scout ships sometimes passed by and laughed at what they saw. Humans still used chemical rockets that barely reached their own moon. They fought wars with metal bullets and explosives. Their cities burned fossil fuels and poisoned their own air. Most galactic species considered them too primitive to bother with. The Empire scouts filed their reports with amusement. Primitive chemical propulsion. Tribal warfare. No unified government. Estimated time to space travel, 500 years. Minimum. Threat level, 0. But the scouts missed something important happening in the asteroid belt. Dr. Hannah Park floated in the zero gravity of her secret laboratory. It's built inside the hollow core of Ceres. She had been working here for 5 years, hidden from Earth's, governments, and the galaxy's attention. Her research partner, Dr. Junho Kim, monitored the strange machines they had built together. "The readings are still impossible," Junho said, shaking his head at his instruments. "Human brain patterns shouldn't be able to do this." Hannah smiled as she watched the quantum field generators hum with power. "Maybe that's exactly why we can do it. We're too stupid to know it's impossible." Their discovery had started by accident. While testing new computer interfaces, they noticed something odd. Human consciousness seemed to interact with quantum fields in ways that defied all known science. Other species had rigid, logical thought patterns that locked them into single reality states. Human minds were chaotic, unpredictable, constantly jumping between different ideas and possibilities. This mental chaos was humanity's greatest weakness according to galactic standards. It made them illogical, emotional, and unpredictable. Hannah had discovered it was also their greatest strength. "Show me the probability matrix again," she requested. JUNHO activated the display. Swirling patterns of light danced in the air, showing quantum probability states that existed in multiple dimensions at once. A normal consciousness can only perceive one state at a time, but look at this. He placed his hand near the quantum field. The patterns shifted slightly, responding to his brainwaves. Human neural patterns are so chaotic that they can exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. We can be in several places at once, think several thoughts at the same time, even experience multiple realities. Hannah nodded, understanding the implications. "We're not just observers of quantum mechanics. We can participate in it." Their first successful test had been small. Junho had managed to exist in 2 slightly different quantum states for 3 seconds. In one state, he held a red ball. In the other, he held a blue ball. For those 3 seconds, he held both balls at the same time until his consciousness chose which reality to collapse into. Since then, it made the effect stronger and longer. It could now maintain quantum superposition for several minutes. Their test ship could exist in multiple locations simultaneously, choosing which reality to manifest in only when it needed to take action. The implications were staggering. Faster than light travel became possible by existing in multiple locations at once. Weapons couldn't hit targets that existed in probability states. Matter could be manipulated by changing its quantum reality, but they had to be careful. Earths. Governments would weaponize this technology instantly. The galactic empires would destroy humanity to prevent it from spreading. We need to move to the next phase, Hannah decided. Contact the colony ships. It's time to share this with every human settlement we can reach. Are you sure? Gunho asked. Once we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will notice us. Hannah looked out at the stars through her laboratory's transparent walls. 3 empires had ruled unopposed for millennia, crushing anyone who challenged them. They saw humanity as primitive insects, not worth their attention. Let them notice, she said quietly. It's time they learned what happens when the insects learn to think in quantum. The message went out to 17 human colonies scattered across the galaxy's edge. Each received the same data package containing 5 years of quantum consciousness research. Within days, human settlements began testing the technology, adapting it, improving it. The galaxy's quiet corner was about to become very loud indeed. 6 months after the first quantum consciousness tests, Captain Minho Lee sat in the command chair of the Defiant, watching the stars bend around his ship in impossible ways. The vessel moved through space like a ghost, its hull flickering between solid matter and pure energy as quantum fields danced around it. Contact ahead, Captain, reported Lieutenant Sorajin from her communications station. 3 Zephyrian patrol ships, moving to intercept. Minho smiled calmly. Let them come. Time to see how our crystal friends handle the impossible. The Zephyrian ships approached with typical arrogance. Their crystalline hulls gleamed like cut diamonds, and their weapon systems charged with deadly precision. Commander Veltar of the lead vessel opened communications with his usual contempt. Primitive human vessel, you have entered restricted. Zephyrian space, surrender immediately or be destroyed. That's an interesting offer, Minho replied, his fingers dancing over the quantum field controls. But I think I'll choose option 3. There is no option 3. Inferior being. Is now? The Zephyrian ships fired their crystal lance weapons. Beams of pure energy that could slice through battleship armor like paper. The deadly light streaked toward the Defiant at incredible speed. The beams passed through empty space. Impossible, transmitted Commander Veltar. Our targeting systems show direct hits. That's because you hit us, Minho said cheerfully. We just weren't there when you did. The Defiant had simply ceased to exist in the same dimensional space as the attacks. While the weapons fired, the human ship existed in a parallel quantum state, watching the battle from a reality where the beams couldn't touch them. Only after the danger passed did it choose to collapse back into normal space, but now they reappeared directly behind the Zephyrian formation. How did you get behind us? Veltar demanded, his crystalline voice cracking with confusion. We never moved, Minho explained patiently. We just chose a different probability where we were already here. The Zephyrian commander's logical mind struggled to process this information. His species had mastered faster than light travel, energy manipulation, and matter conversion. But they had never encountered beings who could simply choose which reality they wanted to exist in. This violates all known laws of physics, he transmitted. Only if you think physics has laws instead of suggestions, Sorajin replied with amusement. The encounter ended without violence. The Defiant simply faded away, existing in too many quantum states for the Zephyrian sensors to track, Commander. Veltar filed his report with growing unease, but his superiors dismissed it as sensor malfunction. Similar encounters were happening throughout the galaxy. Human ships appeared in Kethfer territory, phasing through their hive ship defenses like they were made of mist. They materialized in luminary space, somehow existing in the same energy frequencies as the plasma beings without being absorbed or destroyed. Admiral Yuna Kong of the Kethfer Collective Consciousness studied these reports with growing alarm. Her species shared thoughts instantly across billions of minds, calculating every possible outcome before taking action. But the humans operated on pure chaos, making decisions that no logical mind could predict. They cannot be doing this, she transmitted to her fellow minds. Matter cannot exist in multiple states simultaneously, yet the evidence is undeniable, responded the collective. Appear in our space, observe our movements, then vanish before we can respond. Admiral pulled up tactical displays showing human ship movements over the past month. The patterns made no sense. Human vessels seemed to be everywhere at once, appearing in star systems thousands of light years apart at exactly the same time. They are not using conventional faster-than-light travel, she realized. They are existing in multiple locations, simultaneously choosing which reality to manifest in only when they need to act. The implications terrified her. The Kethver's greatest strength was their ability to think as one mind, sharing knowledge and coordinating perfectly. Beings who could exist in multiple realities at once, collective thought became a weakness. They calculated based on single reality scenarios. While the humans operated across infinite possibilities, trade routes began failing as human ghost fleets appeared throughout the galaxy. They didn't attack cargo ships or steal resources. They simply observed, taking detailed scans of Empire technology and economic systems before vanishing back into quantum superposition. The galactic stock markets started showing strange fluctuations. Cargo that should have taken weeks to deliver appeared at its destination instantly. Resources that existed in Zephyrian space somehow ended up in Kethver, went territory without passing through the border systems. Emperor Thulvan of the Luminari. Empire called an emergency session of the Galactic Triumvirate. His energy form flickered with agitation as he addressed his fellow rulers. The humans are disrupting established trade patterns, he announced. Our economic models no longer function. When matter can exist in multiple locations simultaneously, they are primitives, insisted Empress Zara of the Zephyrians. Chemical rockets and tribal warfare. How can they possess technology that surpasses our own? Perhaps because they think differently than we do, Admiral Yuna suggested. Their chaotic thought patterns allow them to interface with quantum mechanics in ways our ordered minds cannot comprehend. The three empires had ruled for millennia through superior technology and organized thinking. They had never encountered a species that gained power through chaos and unpredictability. Their carefully maintained control systems began showing stress fractures as human ships continued appearing and disappearing throughout their territories. On Earth, Dr. Hannah Park received reports from 17 human colonies, each successfully implementing quantum consciousness technology. Her quiet experiment had become a galactic phenomenon. The ripples were spreading, and soon they would become waves. The emergency session of the Galactic Triumvirate convened in the Void Nexus, a massive space station that existed at the exact center of the galaxy. For the first time in 3,000 years, the three empire leaders met in person rather than sending representatives. The situation had become too serious for anything less than direct contact. Ambassador Jiwan Park stood in the center of the Great Hall, her human form small and fragile compared to the towering figures around her. She flickered slightly, her outline wavering as she existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. This casual display of impossible physics made the Empire leaders deeply uncomfortable. Empress Zara of the Zephyrians rose from her crystal, thrown her diamond-like body refracting light into rainbow patterns. Human, we demand an explanation. Your species has disrupted galactic trade and violated our territorial boundaries. What technology do you possess? Jiwan smiled calmly. We possess the ability to think differently than you do. Possible, declared Emperor Thulvan of the Luminari, his plasma form brightening with anger. No mere biological process can manipulate quantum fields. You must have discovered some alien artifact or stolen advanced technology. We discovered something much more powerful, Juan replied. We discovered that our so-called weakness was actually our greatest strength. Admiral Unikong of the Kethver Collective leaned forward, her insect-like features twitching with curiosity. Explain this paradox. Your species is chaotic, illogical, emotionally unstable. These are evolutionary failures, not advantages. Gilwan's form solidified as she chose to exist in only one reality for the moment. You're right, we are chaotic. We are unpredictable. We make decisions based on emotion rather than pure logic. But that chaos is exactly what allows us to interface with quantum mechanics in ways your ordered minds cannot comprehend. She gestured, and holographic displays appeared around the chamber, showing brainwave patterns from different species. Look at your neural patterns. Zephyrians think in perfect crystalline structures, every thought precisely organized. The Kethvers share a collective consciousness that calculates every possibility before acting. The Luminari process information as pure energy, flowing in predictable patterns. The displays shifted to show human brain activity. Now look at ours. Complete chaos. Random neural firing. Thoughts that jump from one idea to another without logical connection. Your scientists have always seen this as proof of our inferiority, because it is, Empress Zara stated firmly. Organized thought is superior to random chaos. Not when. Dealing with quantum mechanics, Guan countered. Quantum fields exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. Your organized minds can only perceive one state at a time, forcing the quantum field to collapse into a single reality. But our chaotic consciousness can exist in multiple states, allowing us to participate in quantum superposition rather than just observe it. She flickered again, suddenly appearing in 3 different locations around the chamber simultaneously. We don't just use quantum technology, we become quantum technology. The implications hit the Empire leaders like physical blows. Their entire civilization was built on the assumption that organized, logical thinking was superior to chaotic emotional decision-making. They had spent millennia perfecting their mental processes, removing unpredictability and chaos from their consciousness. You're saying that our evolutionary advancement has made us unable to access this technology? Admiral Yuna asked, her collective consciousness struggling to process the concept. Exactly, Guan confirmed, returning to a single form. Dr. Hannah Park's research teams have been sharing quantum consciousness techniques with every human colony. In the galaxy, each settlement has become a node in a quantum network that your most advanced computers cannot map or predict. Emperor Thulvan's SNG form pulsed with frustration. Then we will simply assimilate your technology. The Luminari have absorbed countless civilizations and their knowledge. You can't, G1 said simply. It's not technology in the traditional sense. It's a way of thinking, a way of being. You would need to fundamentally change your consciousness, embrace chaos and unpredictability. Your species have evolved beyond the ability to think that way. The Zephyrian Empress stood abruptly, her crystal form chiming with anger. Then we will destroy your research facilities and prevent this technology from spreading further. Too late, Yuan replied with a gentle smile. We've already shared it with hundreds of human settlements. Some have improved on the original designs. Others have developed completely new applications. The technology is spreading faster than you can track it. Reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human traders were offering impossible deals, delivering goods before they were ordered. They provided resources from asteroid fields that didn't exist on any star chart. Materials that seemed to come from parallel dimensions where different physics applied. The galactic economy began, showing serious stress fractures. The 3 empires' carefully maintained trade networks relied on predictable supply chains and logical resource distribution. When humans could exist in multiple locations simultaneously, traditional economic models became meaningless. On the mining world of Kepler 44-b, human workers were extracting or from quantum probability states, harvesting materials that existed in multiple dimensions at once. A single mine could produce enough resources to supply an entire star system in the Andromeda shipping lanes. Human cargo vessels were delivering supplies to destinations before they left their starting points, creating causality loops that made traditional logistics impossible. The 3 empires watched their millennial economic systems crumble as humans, demonstrated that scarcity was just another rule that could be broken with the right kind of thinking. This changes everything. Admiral Yuna transmitted to her collective consciousness. They're no longer the apex predators of the galaxy. The paradigm had shifted, and the old order was beginning to collapse. The 3 empires made their decision. In secret, each believing they could handle the human threat alone while the others were distracted. Pride and ancient rivalry prevented them from truly working together. Even when facing an unprecedented challenge, Empress Zara of the Zephyrians struck first. Her crystal battleships, each the size of a small moon, jumped into the Sol system. With weapons blazing, The plan was simple: destroy Earth and end the quantum consciousness threat at its source. Target the third planet, she commanded from her flagship. Sterilize the surface completely. Crystal lances fired, beams of pure energy that could crack planets open like eggs. But the Earth they targeted wasn't there anymore. Instead, the planet flickered between 7 different quantum states, each one slightly different from the others. Possible, transmitted her weapons officer. The planet is existing in multiple realities simultaneously. Then fire at all realities, Zara ordered. The weapons fired again, targeting every quantum state where Earth existed. The beams passed through empty space in some realities, while in others they struck defensive shields that shouldn't have been possible to build. Commander materialized his small human fleet directly inside the Zephorian formation. His 12 ships appeared to be in multiple locations at once, each version real and dangerous. The crystal battleships found themselves surrounded by enemies that existed in quantum superposition. You cannot be in all those places at once, Zara transmitted directly to Deho's flagship. Why not? He replied calmly. We're not bound by your limited understanding of reality. Zephyrine ships fired their weapons, but the human vessels simply weren't there when the beams arrived. They existed in probability states, choosing which reality to manifest in only when they needed to attack. Deho's fleet struck back, their quantum weapons bypassing shields entirely by existing in realities where the shields had never been raised. Crystal battleships began exploding from the inside as human weapons materialized within their hulls. Meanwhile, in the eastern spiral arm, the Kethver launched their own assault. Admiral Yuna led a swarm of 10,000 hive ships toward human colonies. Believing that overwhelming numbers would succeed where individual power had failed, the humans cannot exist in infinite quantum states, she transmitted to her collective consciousness. They must have limitations. Lieutenant Taiho Park proved her wrong. His single human cruiser faced the entire Kethver swarm alone, but he wasn't really alone. His consciousness existed in thousands of quantum states simultaneously, each one piloting a different version of his ship. The Kethver ships fired in perfect coordination, a shared consciousness calculating the exact position where the human ship would be. But Taiho existed in every position at once, and also in none of them. This is impossible, Admiral Yuna declared. One ship cannot defeat 10,000. You're right, Taiho replied, his voice coming from every direction at once. But I'm not one ship. I'm every ship I could possibly be. His quantum weapons fired from angles that didn't exist in normal space. Kethver vessels exploded as their hive mind consciousness tried to process attacks that came from multiple realities simultaneously. The collective mind, designed for perfect coordination, became a weakness when faced with truly chaotic quantum warfare. The Luminary Empire made their move in the galactic core, sending Emperor Thulvan himself to absorb human settlements. Energy beings. They believed they could simply convert human consciousness into their own plasma forms. Captain Minji Lee defended the human colony of New Busan with just 3 ships. When Thulvan's energy form engulfed her vessels, expecting to dissolve them instantly, he found something unexpected. You cannot absorb us, Minji transmitted as her ships continued functioning inside his plasma body. We exist in quantum states that your energy form cannot process. The human ships were there and not there simultaneously, existing in probability states that the Luminary Emperor couldn't convert to energy. They were too chaotic, too unpredictable for his ordered plasma consciousness to understand. Worse, the human ships began converting his own energy into quantum states, fragmenting his consciousness across multiple realities. For the first time in his existence, Emperor Thulvan felt fear. Across the galaxy, the 3 empires' attacks were failing catastrophically. Their most powerful weapons couldn't hit targets that existed in multiple realities. Their advanced strategies meant nothing against enemies, who could be in every possible position at once. The galactic economy collapsed completely. As human quantum technology spread to other species, the rigid trade networks that had sustained the empires for millennia became meaningless when matter could exist in multiple locations simultaneously. On the crystal world of Zephyros Prime, citizens watched in amazement as their perfect cities, began showing quantum fluctuations. Some humans were teaching willing Zephyrians how to embrace chaos in their crystalline thinking, helping them access their own quantum potential. In Kethver space, individual hive members were breaking free from the collective consciousness for the first time in their species' history. They discovered that independent, chaotic thought could open doorways to quantum reality. Even some luminari began experimenting with quantum coherence, their plasma forms dancing between probability states as they learned to think in possibilities. Rather than certainties, the three empires carefully maintained hierarchies, crumbled as their own citizens began adopting human quantum consciousness techniques. The old order was unraveling completely, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history. Commander Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the last Zephyrian battleship retreat in confusion. The great empires had learned a hard lesson. True power didn't come from superior technology or organized thinking. It came from the ability to imagine that impossible things were possible. 1 year after the great battles, the galaxy had become a place that no one could have imagined. Dr. Hannah Park stood on the observation deck of New Sol Station, watching children play in the quantum gardens, where flowers bloomed in 17 different colors simultaneously. The station itself existed in 7 dimensions at once, a marvel of human engineering that had seemed impossible just months before. The 3 great empires still existed. They were no longer the masters of the galaxy. Their rigid hierarchies had crumbled like ancient towers in an earthquake, unable to adapt to a universe where consciousness itself had become fluid and changeable. "The transformation is remarkable," said Ambassador Jiwon Park, materializing beside Hannah in a shimmer of quantum light. "Even I didn't expect the changes to happen so quickly." Through the transparent walls, they could see Zephyrian children playing with human youngsters, their crystal forms flickering between solid and translucent as they learned to embrace quantum states. These young Zephyrians had broken free from their species' obsession with perfect order, discovering that controlled chaos could be beautiful. "Look at little Haeyeon over there." Hannah pointed to a small human boy who was teaching an insect-like Kethver child how to exist in multiple realities at once. He doesn't see anything strange about playing with someone who used to be part of a hive mind. The Kethver child, barely 3 years old, had been born after the Great Change. She was the first of her species to develop individual consciousness, while still maintaining the ability to connect with the collective when she chose. Her parents called her a miracle, but Hannah knew she was simply evolution in action. Captain Minho Lee docked his ship at the station, turning from a patrol mission in what used to be hostile, luminary space. His crew included members from all 3 former empires, beings who had learned to think in quantum possibilities rather than fixed realities. "The luminary settlement on Proxima 7 is thriving," he reported to the station commander. "They've learned to exist in both energy and matter states simultaneously. Their plasma forms can now solidify into physical bodies when needed." This was the new reality. Species that had been locked into single forms of existence for millions of years were discovering they could become something more. The luminari learned to take solid form. The Zephyrians discovered that their crystal structures could flow like liquid. The Kethver individuals found they could think independently while still sharing thoughts when they wanted to, but the changes weren't without challenges. On the former Zephyrian homeworld, protests continued as traditional leaders struggled to maintain control. Some crystal beings refused to accept the new quantum reality, clinging to their ancient belief that perfect order was superior to chaos. "We have maintained civilization for 10,000 years, declared High Crystalline Velthara during a broadcast from the planet's surface. "We will not abandon our heritage for this human madness." Yet even as she spoke, her own crystal form showed tiny fractures that gleamed with quantum light. The change was happening whether she accepted it or not. Admiral Unikong of the Kethver had made a different choice. She had voluntarily separated herself from the collective consciousness, becoming the first independent Kethver leader in her species' history. Her decision had inspired thousands of others to follow her example. Individual thought is terrifying, she admitted during a meeting with human leaders. "For millions of years, we never had to make decisions alone. But it's also liberating. I can think thoughts that the collective never could. The economic changes were equally dramatic. The old trade networks based on scarcity and distance had become meaningless when humans could deliver goods across multiple dimensions simultaneously. A new economy emerged based on ideas, creativity, and possibilities rather than physical resources. Young Tai-Ho Park, now in his 20s, had become one of the galaxy's leading quantum engineers. He worked with teams of mixed species to build impossible structures that existed in multiple realities at once. His latest project was a city that could house 10 million beings in a space no larger than a single building. "We're not just changing how we live," he explained to a group of visiting dignitaries. "We're changing what it means to be alive." The three former empires still maintained their territories, but borders had become fluid concepts. Zephyrian crystal. Ships could phase through Kethfer's space without conflict. Luminary energy beings danced between human colonies, sharing knowledge and learning new ways to exist. Not everyone embraced the changes. Some worlds chose to remain in the old ways, maintaining their traditional forms of consciousness and rejecting quantum technology. Humanity respected these decisions, understanding that forced change was no better than forced stagnation. Dr. Hannah Park often wondered what her younger self would think of this new galaxy. Her simple experiment in quantum consciousness had become a revolution that touched every corner of civilized space. "We didn't conquer the galaxy," she told her research team during their weekly meeting. "We taught it to conquer itself." The old apex predators were gone, replaced by something unprecedented. A galaxy where multiple forms of consciousness could exist together, each contributing their unique perspective to the greater whole. In the quantum gardens, children who would have been mortal enemies just years before played together, their minds naturally adapting to multiple realities. They were the first generation to grow up in a universe where impossible things were simply everyday occurrences. The galaxy had learned that.
Ouch.
It came from being willing to imagine that you could become something completely different from what you were. And in that lesson, everyone had found their own form of transcendence.